Hi, good evening.
Good evening, Victor.
Yeah, I want to ask why we didn't get tags because I didn't see anything about it on the Slack channel. That's for full time. Because I was hearing something about API for a couple of part-time backend people.
I think the Silos dropped an announcement today that was talking about why there was no task. I think if you read the announcement channel, you will see uh the Silos dropped an announcement regards why there was no task. So
Okay,
yeah,
I'll go check it now. Thank you.
All right. Cool. I guess there's no questions today. Like everybody just
sorry.
yeah. Clouded.
I have a question concerning the REST API.
Right.
REST framework. So the question I want to ask is, most times, like when I was after watching your video, I decided to make more research. So I heard YouTube has their own API. Like, so basically, I just want to ask, what's because most times, sorry, can you hear me?
Yeah.
Because most times, we send a request to API and get a feedback in JSON format. So what I want to ask is that, like, I don't understand. Is it just because so far what I've been seeing about API is just maybe okay, they want to ask about name, ID, stuff like that. Because sometimes when I think about API, I usually think it would be something like how should I say it? Something more of a GUI or something. Yeah. So that is what I just want to. I need clarification on that.
Right. So basically, APIs are like messengers, right? So and what they carry is data between two particular programs, right? So they are like an interface. For you to access this program, you have to go through the API, right? So in relatives to Django now, if you are peradventure you have like a blog application, and of course you have your templates page, everything, right? And you want to use the same blog application with another application with another front end. Like there's a different front end now that is developed with maybe React or Angular or any front end web framework, right? So the way by which those two applications can communicate, can share data is through APIs, right? So they are like messengers that take requests from the front end up to the back end, and also the return response back. So it's like to and fro like that. So and you can build anything, you can develop anything. It depends on what you're building on back end, right? You can develop anything on back end. Of course, you can develop a chat app, you can develop whatever. But the main point is you would have like an interface by which other front-end web framework can communicate with that app, can make changes, can make changes on that app, can get information, can update, can delete, can perform all those CRUD, CRUD or CRUD functionalities, right? So yeah, so basically that's API, right? So I don't know if I like answer your question. You can develop anything on backend. So and you want to like provide that API, that your backend functionality. For let's take for example, let me use an example. I develop an app, an e-commerce app, right? And what I developed initially was full like web page with templating and everything was in Django. But I want to provide services to like other people. They have their own front end. They need me to provide them an interface by which they can add items to carts. They can list items, right? They can create items. They can add items to carts, right? So what do I need to do? I just need to create an API for them. And that API is the method by which they would communicate with their app. So, and the API format, as I said, is a JSON. It is JSON, JavaScript Object Notation. It is the format by which you get data to and fro, right? So, yeah, so basically, that's what an API is. Do you understand that?
Right, thanks. Yeah.
Yeah, right. So, please, if you want to, I'll just unmute your mic and ask. I can see one hand up. Can you unmute?
Okay, good evening.
Hi.
I want to ask, so does that mean that there can be a full stack app using only API as the backend, or does it need to have a backend separately and an API separately? Like if app A already have a backend and then app B needs the same functionality of app A, that means it can use API of back A.
Exactly.
And not actually have its own backend, right?
Yeah.
So which means API can serve as the backend of another app.
Another backend, makes sense. So let's take, for example, now in my blog app, I want to implement an email feature, right? So there are some email services like SendGrid or maybe Amazon SCS. And these services provide APIs by which I can make requests there and they will send back a response. That is a backend service. My service too is a backend service. So that's like, I can make requests to that backend service and they return a response, of course, right? So APIs can, as long as it's an app and you can communicate with, they can communicate with each other via APIs. So I once worked on a project where we have different services. The authentication service was built with Node.js. The like user model itself and every other thing was built with Django. If you want to authenticate the user, you have to send like the user details and everything to the Node.js app, of course, via API, and it will authenticate the user, return back the JSON web token, and then you send out to front end. So APIs are not limited to technologies. You can have different apps with Node, PHP, Express, and Node.js, even Flask, different technologies, and they'll be able to communicate with each other via APIs. You can, yeah, sure. So that's how it is. It's, yeah, as you said, it's not necessarily like a front end to front end. It can be back end to back end, front end to back end. Like
all right, thank you.
Yes. I guess everybody's feeling the cold.
Hello?
Hi.
Yeah, I want to ask another question.
Go ahead.
Does Django have its own like animation, front-end animation package, Python package? You know, those kind of cool animations that you find in Nest and Node websites, React websites. If you want to animate Django websites like that, like does Django have its own animation package or something?
It's not like CSS.
Or how do you do animation in a Django website or app?
That's like CSS now. Like to create animations, I don't know.
Okay.
Yeah, so there's a way you can add CSS to your Django app. Like when you have your HTML, of course, using Django templates in. You can have your HTML in your Django app.
Yeah.
And the way you can, of course, create your CSS file, and yeah, sure, they work with the app. I don't really understand what you mean by animation, but I guess you're referring to CSS, right? You can even use Bootstrap as a CSS framework. You can integrate Bootstrap to in your app also, right?
Okay.
So most of these things have like packages. You can check them on like there are a lot of packages for different things.
Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you.
There's a Django CSS package, Bootstrap package. Yeah. So. So how you guys?
Hello. Good evening.
Okay.
Hi, go ahead.
Okay, please, can you explain serializer for me?
So serializers in Django, right?
Yes.
They are used to serialize, like change the format of objects. So they are used to convert the format of objects. You know, when I have a Django object, for example, when I create a blog object, and that particular object, I have to like serialize it to a JSON format before I can send that information out, right? So serializers are provided by REST framework. It is for converting objects to like data format, a JSON data type, that is understandable by like other apps, by JavaScript or any other front-end app, right? Or any other backend app or anything. So yeah, and also they are used to also convert those JSON formats to objects, right? So let me see if I can show you an example. I'll have to like start. Colali, if you have a question, you can just ask while I pull up my VS Code. Augustine.
Good evening, Femi.
Hi, Augustine.
The other day, the other day I was going through the last work we did. That is like the Django CRUD project. So, from other studies that I did, whenever a form was to be used in a project, there was usually a forms.py file where you import the model, I guess. Then you create the class for the form. Then you also declare the models or the fields in the models that will be displayed in the form. But in that Django code, there was no field. There was no forms.py folder, and you used form. So I want to be clear a bit on that.
Okay. Let me see, is Steam or it still be on this call or Steam or any other method. Yeah, so basically Django like provides like once you declare your Django basically provides a way, once you declare your models, right, you can automatically get forms from those models. So basically everything that is happening in that particular app is done in the background where with your view sets and everything, right? So Django is handling the form creation and every other thing. If you notice, if you go to, I think one of the HTML files also, you would see there's parts where we're rendering form dots. You'll see something related to form dots as I can't remember. So what that particular line of code is doing is it is rendering the form from the models, right? So I don't know if the person that sets the task is on this call, so they can really explain very well.
So I have a question. Sorry.
Is that still Augustine?
No.
Augustine.
Sir, sorry, I didn't get you. Hello?
Yeah.
I'm sorry, I didn't get you. My network just flooded.
Yeah, what?
My network, I couldn't get you.
Network. Okay, so what was the last thing you heard?
You said Django create forms for us that if I look in one of the HTML templates where you render a form, so that was the last
so
thing.
the form was rendered based on like the models that were created, right?
Okay.
So yeah, so that way you do not need to like create like forms of UI file or something.
Okay. Thank you very much.
I have a question. Yeah.
I don't know if
I have a question.
Okay, go ahead.
Yeah. So creating a form.py file, is it specific to CRUD functionality? Is it specific, or maybe it's every time that, maybe is it any time that I want to use form, that is when I will have to create form.py file, or the form.py file is specific to CRUD functionality?
I don't know, depends on your use case. If you want your front-end users to be able to submit information, updates, of course they will need like a form or something to interact with to perform all those kind of operations. So for create, let's say for create, you are taking some certain information, and of course you need a form to do that, right? So yeah. So unless on backend you can just perform CRUD from maybe admin, or by using the shell like Python -py shell. Okay. You get that?
Yeah. So CRUD functionalities, that is the only way for users to be able to create, delete, and post and do all those stuff, right? That's the only way.
Well, you have to be more specific. Like that's the only way. We just talked about APIs, right? Users can perform code operations via APIs, and another way is by creating forms for users to submit data and update data. They don't necessarily need a form to delete, because or maybe they do like to send some certain information that backend search with. So, and even to get some information like search, let's say you want to perform a search, of course you need a form, right, to take data that will at the backend search. So yeah. Okay. So I'm going
Okay,
to answer.
sorry. So for example now, how to create a social media app.
Mhm.
I want to a social media app whereby user can post, um, delete and stuff like that. So what I'm trying to ask is that is it only the CRUD functionalities that I can use to achieve that, or there's other method like to do that? Is the other method
To do what?
whereby user can create post and delete stuff? Like imagine creating a social. Okay, let me take for example. I want to create a social media app, something like that. So is it a must I use CRUD
How
for my?
was think if user can communicate with your app or what other method?
Sorry, I didn't get you.
What other method? I don't know if you are asking like, is it by sending requests to create? I don't really understand that question because there is no way else a user can communicate with your app unless through CRUD operations, right? The only thing, um the only kind of operations a user can perform on your app is maybe they want to create something, they want to sign up, is create. They want to log in. Login is like reading because they are not creating anything. They are just, they'll send a certain information and then you check and then you return the response based on that. They want to delete, they created a blog, is create. They want to get information of the blog, is read. They want to update the blog, is update. They want to delete the blog, is delete. What other operations do you think a user can perform? I don't really understand your question, but maybe someone else understands.
Okay.
Yeah, just like you said now, it's a CRUD operation now. So almost everything that you do on a website, revolves mostly around CRUD, creating, reading, updating, and deleting. There are some few, I know there is a few other methods generally, but those are the basic few. If you look at it practically.
Can you mention those methods? I think maybe that's the question.
Okay, like I know create CRUD, that's CRUD, is analogous to create is to post. So when you say create, the same thing as the HTTP method is a post request. Then read is a get request. Then update is read is a get request. Yes, update is a put request, and then delete is a delete request. Then I know there are some other method. I've forgotten them like offhand, but I know that those are like the main four methods we use. So if you look at it practically, I think the way to look at it is if you look at like a social media website, a normal, so any social media, let's say Twitter or Facebook, if you look at it from the moment you create an account, when you are creating an account, you are making a post request because you're sending information to a database. The next thing after you create, let's say you go out and come back, is to log in. When you log in, you're also sending a post request, a get request, because you are trying to get your information from the database, all the pictures, all your friends, all your tweets, the likes and everything, it gets from the database. Then the next thing is you go through your post, you read pictures, you read people's comments, you click on links and all those stuff. You are reading. In that case, now you are reading what is in there. Now you may want to make a post, or you may want to edit something that you posted. That's updating. Then the other thing you can do is to delete. So generally speaking, there's almost anything you want to do in a web application revolves around CRUD operations. So I think that's just what he's trying to say, that everything revolves around CRUD. So there's hardly anything you want to do on a website that does not involve around those four operations. So that's
Right. Thank you.
Hello,
So who was asking the question?
hello. Please, I would like to ask a question on that instance.
Why before you move on, who was asking the question on CRUD?
Yeah, I'm the one.
Okay. So what do you think?
It's clear.
Huh? Okay. So Why sorry, why before you go ahead, there's a pending question on serializers. So I wanted to show like what is really happening in background, right? If I do not have this particular serializer class, yeah, because when I created the object, I have like a serializer class. Now, if I should comment out this, let me use a different. Let me use a different view sets. So I can show you what's really happening in the background. Right, so what I did here was I created a view set and I created a method to return all the posts in the database, of course, and I'll have to modify my URLs for that. Okay. So let me just point out this. Okay, so now when I run my app, mm, so um, I'll open up Postman now to check what will happen. Okay. So on my Postman, I want to return all of the posts, right? That is what I want to do. So when I go to the endpoints, there is an error. Sorry. Yeah. So there's an error here that says type error. Okay, I think that's not even the error. see. Get those things. So there's an error that we are getting, and if we check the okay, I need to return. Okay, so first and foremost, this error here is saying I have to return a response, so maybe an HTTP response or other thing. So you would see what it's saying here is it is returning a query set, a class query set from post, right? So what I need to do is to return something. So I would import the return, the response class. I'll import the response class, and I will do this. Let me just say query set. So right. So when I do that, I have added a response. So what this is doing is it is going to return an HTTP response, right? So it is returning an HTTP response, and so when I ask it to return, I'm getting a type error again, and so it's saying type error object of type post is not JSON. If we print out what we have here in query sets, right? So what this is telling us is whatever objects that will be returned here must be of a JSON type, right? So let me just run this request again, and then you see what is being printed out. You will see we have a list of query sets that are being printed out. How do I make all of these objects serializable? That is where serializers come in. So what do I need to do? I just need to pass them into my serializer, right? And say self.serializer class query sets. And I'm setting many equals to true because we have more than one object, right? So self.serializer class, of course, because I declared self here, and I can access it through, so it's part of the class, right? So so if I try to send this again, I should get, okay, there's another type of, I have to return serializer here. Serializer dot data. So when I send this again, you can see now I'm getting a response that is a list of objects that has each of those objects now with their title and body and everything. So basically that is what Serializer does. And all these fields that are returned are based on the fields that I specified here, right? I only want Serializer to return the post, title, and the body. If I want it to return all the fields, I'll just do /all __ all, then double underscore. And when I run this, you will see the other fields that are there. Initially, we were returning ID and title, but now we have, initially we were returning title and body, but now we have ID, title, body, created out, and updated out. So basically that's the serializer. That's how to serialize. right? And to deserialize, that is when we send a JSON body and we want to make this to become an object, a query set, like a query set that can be saved in the database. So how do I do that now? What I need to do is, of course, this method is to get, I can just create another method here that is create posts, and we have to specify that serializer equals to, okay, let me just think I need to write everything. Right, so what is I'll explain each line of code. The first line is we want to pass our data, right? The data that was being sent from Postman is sent through the requests, right? And we can access that data, the data through requests data. So, and when we pass that data into the serializer class, it will create a model or an instance of that from post. So if we send this, right, we are sending title and body. Basically, what is happening is when the request of data gets to this line, it calls the serializer class, of course, and then it does something like this. It creates an instance, say post dot objects dot create, and then it passes in this into the title field. Thus title equals second post, right? Okay, let's go with this. So this is what happens when you pass your model as a post request. It creates an instance of this, and then it returns, and then it saves, right? It saves the objects. So that is why what we have here is to check if the serializer is valid. If all the data that was sent here, it is validated, like they are valid data, then it saves. This is the line where it creates the objects that was sent. So it saves, it creates an object of post. So basically, we can test that by creating another URL. Yeah, I think we can just add it here. This should actually work. I haven't tried this before. So I would say posts, because we have a get already. My posts will be create posts. Right, create posts. So if we make this a post request here, then you send this, it should actually work. Yep, so we're able to create an instance of posts, second post, right? So basically that is what Serializer does. Who asked that question? I think it was
I'm the one that
Tiamaka.
Yes.
Yeah, so what do you think?
Okay. So far so good. It's a bit clearer, but I think I still have to go back to look at it again. But I have another question. So when I was trying to implement my REST, the dashboard I used came out with Django REST framework. So what is the difference between using Django REST framework and using a product like Postman?
So you mean like using Django REST framework interface, right?
Exactly.
Well, I think it just makes the whole thing like readable. You know, I don't really use it, but I think it just gives you can also use it to perform like the create, read, or let's take, for example, I want to perform kind of authentication. I know it's Andrew's authentication too, but those are like customized stuff. So basically, I just prefer to use Postman because it gives you a lot of options to work with, and you can easily switch between get, post. Yeah. So so basically that's it. Now, for example, if I have an authenticated endpoint, for example, and I want to get from that endpoint, like, so let's just, for example, this is a bit advanced. I'm using a JWT token, and I want to authenticate that user. I don't think there's a way we can do that from the REST framework interface. Maybe there's a way, but what I do is I installed a third-party package in my browser, and I can put in whatever information I want to send in the request header, right? So, but directly in the REST framework UI, I don't know if that works. So basically, just stick with Postman, like.
So basically, Postman has more things to give than just regular Django framework or Django REST framework. Sorry.
I'm not sure I got that, but yeah. So basically, Postman, that's what is used for, like, to test your APIs, test your endpoints. So why not just use it?
Okay, all right. Thank you very much. That's all for mine.
Yeah. All right. Spinoza.
Okay. From the aforesaid, we have asked a question about that of Twitter. For the I beg your pardon. For the Django CRUD, does that mean that since we cannot update on Twitter, for example, to edit, does that mean that Twitter does not have the update functionality is not visible on Twitter? That is the first question. And the second question is that on the basis of the relational database, for example, the PostgreSQL, the MySQL, and the SQLite, of these three, which of these relational database is the most effective whilst building an app? Thank you.
Oh, right. So for your first question, you can't edit a tweet? Does that mean Twitter deactivated like the update feature? Yeah, of course. Like, basically, you can create a tweet, you can delete it, and you can also retrieve it. Like, when you go to your timeline, you see the tweet listed. But that particular tweet, you cannot edit it. So you can perform update functionality on that tweet. So basically, that is what is happening. So maybe on the admin side, maybe on Twitter admin side, they are able to update. But for we front-end users, we can only perform create, read, and delete on a tweet. Do you understand?
All right. Yes.
And sorry.
Yes, I get the point.
So on databases, right? On databases, MySQL, Postgres, MySQLite. On development environments, you can use any of the databases like MySQLite or Postgres or MySQL itself. But for production, it is advisable to use either PostgreSQL or MySQL. Now, which one is preferable? It all depends on reference, though they have like trade-offs, right? MySQL is very popular but Postgres is a more advanced database. An example is Postgres handles concurrency better than MySQL, right?
Okay. Yes.
So, and yeah, so they have trade-offs, but both are works perfectly in production environments, and you can use any you want. Sorry,
So see
someone says something. Someone's saying something. All right. So yeah. So you can like check. They have trade-offs, right? Especially Postgres and MySQL. You can check that. And one of it, as I mentioned, is Postgres handles concurrency better. And Postgres also supports vast majority of languages, frameworks, and the rest. MySQL, on the other hand, scales very well. It has high scalability. Yeah, so those are some of the differences. Well, it all depends on your preference, anyways. So,
All right. Thank you. Oh, so does that mean that the SQLite is the one with the least effective functionality?
SQLite is just like a file, right, that is created, and yeah. So basically, it's not scalable. It's not really advisable to use it in production. So
Okay. Thank you.
yeah, it's just like a mini database to perform like basic operations generally.
All right. Thank you.
Yeah.
I have a question.
So, Tony, yeah, if you have a question, just unmute and ask.
Okay, so slug, when it comes slug field, what is it used for, slug field? Because the last assignments we were given, I saw slug field and stuff like that. So I just want to clarification on that.
Did you Google it?
Nope, I didn't.
You didn't.
I'm working on other stuff.
So
Surely.
maybe you can try Google it and then you see what this slug field is used for.
Okay.
Anyways, for the benefits of others on the call, a slug field is like used to store, maybe for example, you have like a URL or maybe a readable format for a field or something. Basically, you can use a slug field. For example, I have a URL and I want to go to URL of my name, of my profile, www.twitter.com/. There has to be something that is referencing my profile, right? And that particular thing is, you can use a slug field to represent. Normally, you should have your ID. So, peradventure, my profile has an ID of 1, right? When I go to www.twitter.com/ID, it's going to bring out. So I have my ID. But when you go to www.twitter.com/ whatever your Twitter name is, that particular username, right? That username that you're saying, it's called a slug field. Do you understand? So it's like a representation of your profile or object or whatever. I hope you understand. So basically, it's how you reference a URL to a particular object.
Yes, sorry. In relation to that,
before, okay, you want to add it? Go ahead.
Yeah, but it's just like a question also. I think normally we are like, I watched the video and then they were always using like the PK instead of slug. So like I saw like in the assignments, then it was slug they use, and so I just wanted to ask, like, is it anywhere we can actually like reference PK normally that we can also use slug? Because okay, like this PK now, I think they used it in the URLs. There's a particular representation for it. Then I think when they are preparing some views, they also use like self.pk, maybe like under that place, like in that place of writing pk, they can also be writing slug. Like pk and slug are literally like the same thing, but it's just that they have different functions.
I won't say they are like exactly the same thing. A PK is a unique identifier, right?
Okay.
The slug in some cases might not be unique, right? So, but when you have a slug field on an object, it is how you can typically like reference that particular object. Let's take, for example, a blog, right? A blog. When I in my URLs bar, when I'm on blog that has title of this is my first blog, instead of saying /blog ID, I'm saying /blog, this is my first blog. Like that is what the slug field is used for. It is used for URLs. It is generally used in URLs, right?
But like, can we like use slug? Because I actually checked online. I think some people they actually did it.
I say, can you use slug to like use it
like
to reference to get an object?
Yeah, so exactly something like that. Like where you're using get object or for that kind of thing. Can you also use slug? It's taking like two representations, maybe like request.
Don't use slug.
Don't
use slug to reference objects.
So we have to probably go back to using PK at that point.
Yep.
All right, thank you.
Of course, the PK will be returned, right? If you return an object, the PK and some other information will be returned. So why not just pass in the PK? So the slug might not be unique, so it is definitely not advisable to use that as like to perform the lookups or something.
Okay, but the reason I actually asked is because like like the video I was watching, like they used PK for the URLs, and I actually just wanted to change it, so I used slug there. So I felt since I had not even okay, and also in the model, I think they used PK there. Yeah, I think I used slug. I just wanted to like instead of like now using their PK, that
PK is different.
PK they get reference
is different. It's totally different from slug. I think you are mixing up the two. PK is not the same thing as slug. A PK is a primary key. It is a unique identifier for that model. The slug is just like a more readable representation of that model in the URLs. In fact, you can't use the slug anywhere else except the URLs.
Okay.
So don't mix, it is not the same thing.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, can you hear me? Hello?
Yeah, go ahead. We have 4 minutes.
Oh, okay.
Can you go ahead?
Hear me? Can you hear me?
Yes, go ahead. Thank you, network.
Okay, API. This API, like, I don't really get the concept. Like, does it replace user creating a CRUD from the front end? Like, normally we created the last task we created CRUD operation using a template. So, like, what's now the essence of using this particular Postman and the rest of them? Postman or Thunder clients to create this API?
We're here at the beginning of this session.
Today, I actually joined late.
Yeah, so I answered this same exact question. But basically, APIs, to summarize it, APIs are used to expose your application to external apps. Your Django template and everything is inside one project. Is that not? But you want to make use of your models. You want to make use of your logic and everything, your views, everything. You want to make use of it in another app. You can provide that all those functionality by exposing like an API, by building APIs for them. You understand?
Okay,
So
and can you
APIs
still
are
connect this? Can you still
Can I
connect the
what?
same API to your templates? Like
templates?
let's take for instance, you have an API that collects who actually fills this API?
Who fills them as well?
As in who like when you have an API, let's say I have heard people saying that they are using map API, like they collect weather condition. Like, are you the one to actually fill up code or this API for to be using in another application, or is from your website?
Okay, so the way it is the weather API that you just mentioned. It is someone that developed it, right? But maybe they are using it in their application. Maybe they have a web app and they have one part of their website that they develop themselves and they want it to be showing weather reports. Okay, I also have a website. I want to be showing weather reports. Why do I have to start developing another weather report when the person initially provided an API endpoint where I can just be retrieving the data from that person and just display it on my website? I don't know if you understand that logic. So, do you understand, Tony?
Yeah, I get the logic. I get the logic.
Yeah, so
basically
that's how it is.
So fetching API from an endpoint is just same way like you are fetching your own data from your database and displaying on your website or your application.
Yes, and it is not only fetching. You can, of course, modify. If the person grants me access to create some maybe weather reports for other locations, then he has to give me access to like make a post request to that app. He has to give me access to update and do some other things. So basically, that's how it is.
Okay. Thank you.
All right.
Hello.
Yusuf, you would be the last person because it's 8 p.m. already. Yeah,
Okay. All right. My question is on database, like the Django admin. Once you install Django admin, it comes with SQLite. But earlier on, you mentioned that when you're producing your site, it's not advisable to use the SQLite. Is there a way you can change it maybe to MySQL when it is ready for production?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so in your settings, if you go to the settings file, you'll see here we have databases, right?
Yes.
You can change it by using a different engine. So I'm just going to do kind of, let me see if it works. I want to test the copilots now. Wow, that's cool. Right. So oh, this is interesting. This is the first time I'm actually using Copilot like this. So this is, I just changed the database from MySQLite to Postgres. You will see the engine here is Postgres, right? If you want to use MySQL, this would be MySQL. If you want to use SQLite, it will be the previous one, right? So that is what basically happens. So, and for Postgres, you need to set like, of course, you need to install the Postgres on your system. You need to install, if you're using MySQL, you have to install some certain packages. You can check that online. I think for Postgres, you need to install PSYCOPG something, a package. And for MySQL, you need to install MySQL client. So you need to install those packages, right? Before you can use Postgres or but SQLite, you don't need to install any package. It's basically like a file. So the reason now when you install, the reason why we have all these other options for Postgres is because when you install Postgres, it is like it's a service that is running, and before you can connect to that service, you have to specify like a password, a user, or whatever that you want. Maybe you've created your database on that service and you have to specify those details. So when the app is running, it is connecting with all of these details, right? You understand? So basically, if you want to use different database, you
Yes,
just need
yes.
to change the yeah. So just
All right, thank you.
yeah. So basically, that's it. All right. Yeah, so this was a really productive session. It seems I'll try Copilot. Yeah, it's cool, right? Because from just a comment, I was able to generate a lot of things. So yeah, but there are trade-offs actually, so I won't say that on this call. Anyways, I think that is all from me. Yeah, so this is the last Python drop-in before project phase. And yeah, it was nice to take all of the questions, all right, and be able to answer. Of course, you can reach out to me on Slack at Femi. And yeah, so I guess we'll meet in project phase then. So see you guys. Bye.
Thank you so much, everyone, for attending. Thank you.